Please watch this video all the way through. The last details are important. Chapter 1: The Call. They called it a salvage op. To them it was a paycheck and a contract to recover instruments, old research, and anything sellable from the Hestia, a rusted research ship that had been found drifting off an island no one put on maps. To me it was a way out of the debts and the loneliness that had hollowed my life after the clinic closed. I was Mara then. Practical, wary, convinced I could contain things with locks and checklists. The team was small. Tomas, who could fix anything with wire and a cigarette in his mouth. Lena, who mapped everything and never laughed anymore. Abdul, whose hands were kind and gentle with injured birds. And Dr. Carver, the one who wrote the contracts and spoke mostly in the passive voice. We went out with bright lights and gloves, with the kind of professional calm that people use to hide the way their stomachs drop when the ocean decides it no longer cares. We boarded the Hestia at dawn, ropes creaking like old joints. The air inside kept the wrong things. Stagnant, a chemical tang and something coppery under it that I thought was old machinery. There was a child's cot in a sealed cabin near the stern. Not a cot as an image at the edge of a room, but a nest of toys, a quilt, a jar of buttons. Someone had kept a life there and walked away without taking it with them. Chapter 2. The girl we didn't name. We found her curled under a tarp like something that needed to be shielded from sunlight. She did not speak. Her eyes were the pale gray of glass left in rain. We assumed she had survived on the ship's dwindling stores or someone had been hiding her there. We were sent to recover research. What left the Hestia with us was something alive. We brought her aboard the rescue vessel because nobody aboard wanted to claim a child's death on their conscience. Lena named her Little Light at first, because she would follow the smallest glints of metal with a hunger as if she were looking for a way to mend. I tried to ask her where she came from, but she only pointed to the hull plates like she remembered stories sewn into metal. At night she hummed a pattern that I could not place. It stayed in my ears when I slept. The first strange thing happened 2 days in. The ship's radio that had been dead for months began to play voices. Just pieces, fragments that stitched together into someone calling a name none of us recognized. The weather instruments flipped readings. A compass spun without settling. Small animals, rats, simply vanished between one watch and the next, their droppings on the deck like someone had erased pages from a book. Chapter 3: The Worsening. It was easy at first to explain things away. Salt and old wires. Stress. But then the voices learned to say our names. A laugh like a coin dropping inside a bowl would echo from the ventilation. Lena dreamed of the Hestia's corridors at night and woke knowing things she hadn't learned. Tomas found his tools scattered into neat rows with children's drawings pressed under each wrench. Abdul began to feed the stray gulls on the deck, and they turned on him, pecking until his knuckles bled. The child, who still would not let us name her, began to sleepwalk more. When she walked, the lights dimmed. Still sans. I once followed her into the bowels of the ship and found the wall scored with names. Dozens, carved so small you needed a magnifying glass. Not all names, but dates and small instructions like "Listen at midnight" or "Don't feed the sound." When I asked her, she tapped the list, then tapped her temple, then pointed to the ocean like someone remembering a map that had been torn out of her mind. Chapter 4: The Break. Dr. Carver insisted on testing the phenomenon. He rigged sensors he wrote in notebooks that might as well have been prayers. On the third night, the instruments recorded a spike like an engine revving in nothingness. The film camera captured a cluster of dew forming above the child's head and falling upward. The gulls stopped watching the horizon and faced inward toward the hull, their beaks dripping with seawater that smelled of iron and old coins. People began to disappear. Not with struggle so much as absence, one moment standing, the next the room had a place where they had been. Tomas was the first to go. I found his cigarette pack crushed under a boot print that didn't match his size. I called his name until my voice bled into the hull. Later, I would find his tools arranged at the foot of the child's cot, like an offering. The child watched, unafraid, and when she smiled it was as if the light itself had been negotiation. Lena began to fever, whispering the same line over and over. We carried her back in our pockets. We thought she was small enough to fit. Abdul sobbed into his hands and said he could hear his mother's voice calling from a depth he had never dived to. Dr. Carver, in the end, locked himself in the radio room and spoke into the dead air until his throat went raw. Chapter 5. The truth I could not bear. I tried to turn her away. We could have left her on the Hestia. A small crime of omission that might have kept our souls whole. But the instinct to rescue is a dangerous thing on the sea. Like throwing wood into a kettle to see it boil. I told myself I was saving her, that we were giving her a chance. In truth, we had opened a small door in a cabin where something sat on the sill and bided its time. The truth, when it came, was not a revelation as much as a steady peel. The girl was not possessed by a single old story. She was a vessel. She collected voices and names. She learned our rhythms and then rewrote them. She filled empty places with the histories of other vessels, other people who had tried to carry a thing that could not be owned. She did not sleep, she waited. On what I think was the last night, the ship itself seemed to rearrange. Corridors elongated until they doubled back. Doors opened to the wrong rooms. I found Abdul on the main deck, seated and holding a gull as if it were a newborn. He looked at me with a face I did not recognize and mouthed a phrase I had heard Lena say in fever. It wanted a place to grow. I took a step back and the deckboard underfoot felt soft, like caked earth. Chapter 6: What I Took and What I Left. When it was my turn to be taken, something in me burned at the edges. I do not know if it was luck or cowardice or the mechanics of a child's attention span. I convinced the remaining crew to scatter to lifeboats at dawn. We cut lines and the water accepted our plea. The child stayed aboard the Hestia. She watched us go with a tilt of her head as one watches a tide recede, counting what the ocean has taken. I am writing this because the thing that saved me is the same thing that could end the next story I tell. Secrecy. I buried the small keepsakes I had taken from the Hestia in a tin and left it in the hollow of a rock on the island where we had anchored. I left because I was alive and because there was no dignity in dying for a mistake. There are nights when the room fills with an almost silent chorus, a pattern of breaths not my own. I wake knowing a child's fingers combed my hair. When I look in the mirror, at first glance my eyes are the same, and then I see the faint glass gray veil that crosses my pupils when I am tired. I do not know if it is the sea or the memory of the ship, but sometimes when I listen very closely, a voice hums the pattern she used to hum and I know that somewhere the Hestia keeps her bed, keeps her toys, keeps a list of names she has learned. If you ever find a ship drifting where it ought not be, if you ever smell the copper tang in the air, stay away. Close your eyes and turn your back on a child curled under a tarpaulin. Walk the other way. Do not carry what you cannot understand. I survived. Survival has made me a witness and a conspirator. If this testimony resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give this video a like, comment what you think happened on the Hestia, and share this video with others who need to hear the warning.